everyone. For those of you who are joining me for the first time, my name is Anastasia and I am the owner of VegShe. And for those of you who are returning, welcome back. It's always great to have you here. So today I'm going to be interviewing, and my friend is going to be interviewing me back, Cynthia. We went to Cal Poly Pomona together, and we are here to talk about her journey through veganism and where it's taken her and how she got started. So hi, Cynthia. Thank you so much for joining me. So
Hi,
just to get started, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So thank you so much for having me and for your time. Yeah, golly, where can I start? So yes, we went to Cal Poly Pomona. I think we were studying different things, right? I was more in the STEM space. I studied biotechnology and chemistry. And since then, and I think that's really, if we go back to or tie it back to our conversation, so that's actually where I decided to go vegan during my undergrad, and then I've since committed to that. Now I'm just mostly in the biotech, or my emphasis, or I guess my main interest is moving the healthcare system sustainable, or through the lens of sustainability for social good. So yeah, that's where I'm at now.
That's amazing. Very cool. So I know that you identify as a punk rock steminist. Can you tell people kind of what that means and what that identity means to you?
Yes. So absolutely. So the STEMinist part comes from, again, with STEM, and for those that may not know that acronym, it stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. So that's readily used in the field, or I guess to prompt like a focus on that like educational space, or yeah. And then it's combined with feminism, because I think it's really important that we have female mentors within that space that has been predominantly, what's the word I'm looking for? Predominantly run by males.
Male dominated, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. A male-dominated field, especially as a biomedical engineer. So yes, and I have lots of stories on that that we could talk about. And I think why I identify myself as a punk rocker is since my youth, parents, it was not a phase. It's here to stay. And I really like the punk rock aesthetic, or I guess it's a type of thinking, because it's about like doing it yourself and carving out your own path. So yeah, and the music, of course.
Right. That's awesome. Very cool. And I think we both are in similar fields, and that the work that we do tends to be kind of male dominated. So part of the reason why I broke away from like the gym scene and started my own company was because this isn't the only reason, but partially because it was so male dominated, and there was so much pressure on people to eat a bunch of meat and work out until they threw up, and like it was just all really aggressive, and it just didn't feel like wellness to me. It felt like some sort of weird punishment. So I definitely know what it's like to come from an industry that's male dominated. I think that that's shifting, which is great, but I think it's historically male dominated, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, a very good point. Oh, and if I may you please tell us a little bit more about like your own personal, I know you kind of touched on it, like your own personal journey into veganism, and what kind of made you go into that path?
Yeah, so I have not been vegan as long as you, so I probably have lots to learn, but I would say that my journey actually started with vegetarianism before veganism. So it was after college, and I'm trying to think how many years ago this was now, but it was post-college, and I had gotten to this point where eating meat started to make me feel sick. So like the smell of it, just seeing it being cooked, it just started to be too much for me to be around, and I felt like I was forcing myself to eat it, to like eat a certain amount of protein, and I couldn't do it anymore. And so I just stopped because it didn't make sense. I was like, why am I doing this to myself? So that was sort of how it initially began, and then it evolved into something much bigger. So after a couple years of being vegetarian, I adopted my first dog, Kazuhira, and she is like, she's my baby girl. She's my firstborn, you know, and I don't know, she, just having her in my life, it had a huge influence on me. And I've always been an animal lover, but I don't know, it was just in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm vegetarian and I have a pet dog, but I'm still eating animal products, you know, so I was still trying to figure all of that out sort of from a moral standpoint. And I have a friend, his name is Mark, and he has been vegan forever and a day. And he encouraged me to watch the documentary Earthlings. And I kept telling him, I was like, I don't think I can watch this. Like every few minutes into the movie, like as more time passed, I would text him and I was like, I don't think I can handle this. And he encouraged me to see it because he felt like it was like I wasn't seeing the full picture by just being a vegetarian. So I got through the whole movie and I went vegan that day. I couldn't do it anymore. And I don't believe in wasting food, but I did go downstairs to my kitchen and I threw away all the food that wasn't vegan and I started over. I was like, I can't have any of this in my house. So that, it was sort of dramatic, and that's not the way I encourage my clients to go vegan by any means, but I'm very much like an all or nothing kind of person. And I felt like, yeah, see, you understand. So as soon as I finished that movie, I was like, we're not doing this anymore. So definitely not a recommendation if you're new to veganism, but if you're that type of person, go for it. So that's sort of how I ended up in living a vegan lifestyle.
Yeah, right on. Oh man, yes. I'm 100% also on the same page. I am all or nothing. I think I was like vegetarian for a week and I was like, no, it has to be everything or nothing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
But you went vegan and vegetarian when you were still in school. And I think that would be really challenging because I'm just thinking back to when I was on campus and I had like a meal plan. And this was when it wasn't as, I don't know, as mainstream to be vegan even then. And that wasn't that many years ago. And so I'm wondering, how did you pull that off with a meal plan?
Yeah, Cal Poly, I remember because, and I think this is actually how we met. So I was a resident advisor for the last 2 years. I was at Cal Poly, and I believe you worked at the housing services or residential services. So I would see your beautiful face. And yes, so a part of that, because I was a resident advisor, I also felt I was also more vocal then. Like I'm like, vegan this, vegan that, watch this documentary, read this book type of thing. And I would like tie that in with like my residential like programs for the students, right?
Wow. Yeah.
As well. And I remember because we did have those famous meal plans, and they weren't as many options. Yes, we were fortunate in the sense that we had like a salad bar or like the fruit. So I would hang out there a lot, but I was also very much a junk food vegan in the sense that I'm like, hey, sourdough is vegan, right? Or French fries. Like, obviously I would ask like, hey, are those cooked separate from your chicken tenders?
Right.
They are great. I'll have like a full plate of them and a salad. So yes, it was hard. And I did try to work with the dining services to see if they could start expanding their menu. And I think, well, obviously I haven't been back since, but I think they probably did expand, or maybe because, there was more than just one person requesting things.
Sure.
But yeah, we made it work. Also, they would take your meal plan at the farm store. So that's actually where I got a lot of my stuff.
But that makes sense. And I do think they have added more vegan options because I did go to a wedding at Cal Poly recently and
Awesome.
They made this huge tofu stir fry for the vegans at the wedding.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, this is bomb. They bring out this giant tray and it was like all these fresh veggies and this like tofu, this really good sauce on it. Like it was so good with like brown rice. And anyway, and that all comes from, I think I think all the dining is kind of centralized on campus, at least the kitchens.
Yeah.
So I was like, cool, vegan options on campus. So they do exist, at least now, and probably in part due to you speaking out and asking. Because if people don't ask, and if you're not going to get it if you don't ask for it, and if you don't make people aware that it's something you need. So I think it's cool that you were vocal about what you needed, especially for how much money we were paying, those meal plans. They better figure it out, like, it's not cheap to be on campus, right? Vegan since college. I think that's awesome. So, and you did programming with your students that was related to veganism. So what was that like? Like what sort of programming did you offer? I think that's really cool. And I wish my RA had done that, by the way.
So thank you so much for asking. I was actually taking a trip down memory lane maybe a week ago. I'm just like, hey, this is super cool that I used to do this.
It's very cool.
But I remember just one example off the top of my head was a passive program, which for those that may not know what a passive program is in RA terms, it would just be like a poster that you make where it's visible to all the residents. Mm-hmm. So I made this poster, and it was all about random acts of kindness. But because I also subscribe to PETA and your vegan starter pack, right. So it's kindness can start on your plate. Maybe you can try a vegan meal, for lunch or something like that. So that's how I would kind of encourage my own residents. And whenever I had to run active programs, or I think we also did a St. Patrick's Day or something program, I would go out of my way to get vegan cupcakes and then tell everyone afterwards. I'm like, hey, what did you think of those cupcakes? They're like, hey, they were really good. I'm like, yep, they were vegan. So that's kind of how I would introduce that. And also, I'm just remembering, but in the farm store, they had these really delicious vegan cookies.
Really?
So I would bring them, them to my programs, and with my Bronco bucks, I would go buy them and then bring them and have them to share. Hey, not everything is a salad.
Right. Oh, that's so cool. So you were really doing this way before, definitely way before me. And that's so great. I always find that food is a really good way to introduce people to what their options are, and I've surprised a lot of people. I really like to bake, and so I'll bake and I send stuff to my husband for him to take to the office. And now they all know I'm vegan. It's not a secret, but initially they were like, wow, this lasagna is really good. And I don't make vegetable lasagna. I do Impossible grounds and all the really good vegan cheeses, so it's heavy lasagna. It's really good. Yeah. But I make it's good stuff. I make all these things and I bake and I send it with him, and they always eat all of it and always want more. And I've even had requests where people have asked if I could make the lasagna for their birthday. That's probably one of my more popular recipes. But anyway, I feel food is a good approach. I'm not really I have a hard time when I'm on social media, for example, and people are posting stuff that's really graphic in terms of the animal agriculture industry. Any of those videos that are really triggering really upset me. I can be really sensitive. And so I find that the best approach is actually to just share recipes and then talk about, more of the carbon footprint of eating vegan versus an omnivore diet, as opposed to scaring people with really frightening videos. And I know everyone has a different approach, but for me personally, I've found that food is a better
gateway,
segue or gateway, thank you, than frightening people. But I know for me, I responded to Earthlings, but I also, I don't know, I'm kind of intense, like I said, I'm kind of intense. And so I felt like I had to see it, but I don't necessarily think that's the best approach for everyone.
Yeah. Wow. I completely agree. And again, I think in my youth and how I kind of turned into veganism was watching those hardcore videos. And again, this could also be because I really like horror movies, or that I was really into the graphic stuff. But now, if you ask me to watch those, I still follow a lot of these organizations that kind of that's what they post, right? Because they want to kind of shock people like, hey, this is what you're contributing to.
Mm-hmm.
I can't watch that stuff now. Like, I'm just like, I don't know if I'm overly sensitive now, but I'm just like, I will cry.
Oh.
So I can't see anything like suffering. I'm just like, oh yeah. Woo.
So I was wondering, we were talking about how you went vegan a long time ago, which is super cool. How has it, like, I guess finding food that you like or products or eating at different restaurants, how has that changed for you in like even the last 10 years?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I am super excited that it has, I don't know if it's gotten like completely mainstream, but I definitely see that there's increased visibility. I would consider it mainstream when more people go vegan as well. But I love seeing all the options that there are now. Like, I remember back in my day, all we had was like Boca burgers, right? Or like the original like veggie patties where you could still see like the green peas and like carrots.
The actual veggies, right?
Yeah, the actual veggies. And now they like, you know, like all these like faux meats coming out, and they like sizzle and they like taste, and sometimes like I'm even surprised. I'm like, are you sure this is not meat?
Right.
And yeah, so I've been excited on that front, that there's just been, and the technology, I know there's like a huge push for like food science.
Yeah.
And so that whole sector is like super interesting to me as well, like being in science.
Right.
So kind of watching that, and then how like with the with all these like food systems or like the food science part, it is kind of like they want to tackle a lot more things, not just like the tasty factor, right, of making like vegan food like more tasty for like everyday consumers, but how can they make it more green? Like, how can it be like more sustainable? Because there's a lot of evidence, or, you know, like we can hop on Google and see like, you know, eating a plant-based diet, you know, like how does that look? Especially you mentioned earlier on this call, like our carbon footprint. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like now they want to tackle like sustainability, tasty food, you know, animal welfare. So yeah, it's just been super exciting to me to see all of that like unfolding. And I just feel super fortunate to be able to like eat what I want. Yeah, it's like way easier to get food too everywhere. And there's a lot more restaurants. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And thanks for sharing insight into that. Because I think, like you said, you've been vegan since really your options were super limited to like tofu and Boca burgers, and Boca burgers are still around, but it's definitely the way vegan food looks has definitely changed. And like you were saying too, I think companies are creating products that will appeal even to the non-vegan. So let me see. I know I had all these questions because I'm so intrigued by your major and your identity as a straight edge vegan punk rock steminist. Let's see. I guess the other thing I was wondering was if you had any advice for people who were curious about going vegetarian or vegan, or anything that you would say to anybody who wants to know more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for those that, especially since we're getting into January, right? Like for the new year, I know a lot of organizations like, what is that?
Veganuary.
Yeah, there you go. Or even just like if individuals start thinking about like resolutions, if people still do that, or pivot from resolutions and start thinking about like changing habits, right? My recommendation would be, I mean, I don't know their lives. Like I hear on this call that we're both like extremists and we like to do all or nothing. So if that's you, do it. You're in good company. But if not, or if people are just curious, then I would definitely encourage them to like take baby steps. Like it's okay, like, hey, maybe like the next time if people are going to a restaurant and they see like the Impossible Burger or like Beyond, like have that be an option. And don't forget, minus the cheese. But yeah, so baby steps or like get curious. Yeah, I would encourage people to get curious and just be like, hey, I'm gonna try this out. And they don't have to love it like immediately. But just like think about it. And also if they're really big in reading, like I would encourage them to like check out like books that talk about even just beyond what's on your plate, you know, like the other implications of like a plant-based diet, or continuing to eat like the standard American or like the standard diet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I think that's great advice. I think it makes total sense. I think as far as baby steps go, I think it's a good approach, unless, again, like you said, unless the person listening is like us, then just go for it. I think sometimes people will try a vegan product and it sucks, and then they think that means every other vegan product is going to suck, and that's not true. It's just like with any other food. We've got some really, really shitty fake cheeses, and we've got some really like artisanal, really like stunning, incredible like cashew-based cheeses. So like there's a scale of like crummy products to like really good products. And so I think it's trial and error. And so if you do try that Beyond Burger and it doesn't speak to you, that's okay. There are other options. There's Impossible Burgers, or maybe you're old school and you really like Boca Burgers. Like you'll definitely find what you're looking for, because there are so many options. So don't let the first, vegan cheese you try frighten you away. Not all of it is like glue. Some of it's quite good. I've had some pretty awful stuff, but I've had some pretty incredible stuff too. So
yeah, I agree.
Be open. Don't let it, frighten you away. And I think I definitely agree with your recommendation. Read more and learn about the implications of our food choices. So I actually am in the process of working on my vegan guide, and it talks about all of the implications. Thank you. I'm excited. All of the implications of our food choices, and even environmental racism, which is something that people don't consider, the effect on your personal health, the effect that it has on the planet. And then of course, on top of all of that, and very importantly, is the effect it has on the animals and the quality of their lives, and all of those things. So, but I do think that there are factors people don't consider, including environmental racism. I think that's one that really gets disregarded, or people aren't aware. Because if you don't read and learn about how the food system in the United States works, you really are missing out on a lot of messed up stuff that's going on, even outside of the effect it has on the animals. I just finished reading Meatonomics, and I totally I'm blanking on the author's name, but I'll put it in the description of the video because I forget his name. But he's a lawyer, and he was talking about our food system from an economic standpoint, and how the food subsidies that the government provides to the meat and dairy industry are actually costing us taxpayers billions of dollars a year. We are paying for these companies to destroy the planet and keep their prices artificially low. So I think one argument, and I've talked about this in the past on some of my videos, people feel like vegan food is more expensive than non-vegan food, and there's a few reasons for that. If you're buying the really specialty stuff, sure, it can be a little bit more expensive, but it's also because the government is subsidizing the cost of our food. So a Big Mac should actually not be $5, it should be $13. And you're paying for that through your tax dollars. Even vegans are. So anyway, to your point, there is still lots to learn, and there's still a lot for me to learn. I know this is a lifelong journey, and this is my lifestyle, and I will continue to read and learn and absorb the information. But I think people underestimate how much our food choices matter. Even if you're weird and you don't care about animals, your food choices affect other things too. So
like the environment, or just
it's all important.
Thanks for gracing. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that point up, because I know we may come off, or I know I may come off as like very like happy-go-lucky, like, hey, here's another happy-go-lucky vegan. But like once you really start and that's why reading and like staying, just like being curious and wanting to learn more, like, hey, how does this work? Why is it this way? Like, golly, that could be a whole conversation as well.
Yes.
Just about like, okay, how do I feel? Because at the very beginning, if we like rewind, like when I first went vegan, like I was very hip to like all like the reading and like the choices of other people. And yes, I may be vegan, but I, as a taxpayer, I'm still paying for these subsidies, right? Or I'm like, how does that make me feel? And that's probably why I was more vocal about things. I was just like, wait a minute, has no one read what I read? And you want to like get up on your soapbox. I don't know if that's but yeah, or just like have everyone listen to like your point of view because you found something else. But then, and I think this comes with maturity, you start to be like, okay, not everyone is going to agree with you.
Right.
How can I make a difference?
Absolutely. So I want to go back to what you were talking about. You're a scientist way at the beginning of this conversation, and how you want to make changes sort of in your field that are more sustainable. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about what that would look like, or what your ideas are, or anything about that? Because that sounds fascinating. I think anyone who approaches their everyday career with an activism focus, I think that that's amazing and really important. So I'd love to hear about that if you had anything to share.
Oh golly, where can I start? So yes. I think again, and I feel like I've been very, very much privileged and fortunate to have interned while I was completing my undergrad for a medical device company. So that's really what allowed me to have exposure to like the pharma biotech industry. And it's been great because I've gotten to work in healthcare essentially, but through a different perspective, right? Like an engineering perspective on designing or developing these medical devices that will ultimately go into humans, to either improve their quality of life or maybe extend their life. And so that's been really fascinating.
That's cool.
and I think that's great. But I also acknowledge, and with the onset of like this pandemic, there's been a lot more visibility to the biotech industry as a whole on how it's driven by profits and things like that. People could have their own opinions about that. But I think from my perspective, and also because I am vegan, I look at it, I would really like to see it shift from being reactive, where we're designing or developing medications when people are already sick, to one, and I think this comes from my public health background, where instead of making or developing medicine when individuals are sick, we're actually preventing them from being sick. And I think that really starts with, like the environment that individuals, to your point earlier, like the environmental racism, right? We also realize the impact that if you work, live or play in an environment that's maybe like heavily like industrial, right? Like certain communities, we talk about that all day. And what implications there could be on the individuals that live there, right? And social demographics. That might be going off topic, but again, I would really like to see I would really like to see the industry kind of move from being reactive to like prevention. Like let's keep individuals healthy so that they could, be happy and productive in their own lives. So and I guess my interests really include a sense of sustainability within like the larger healthcare system, because we understand that there's also like a lot of like medical waste, and what do we do with all of these devices that we're developing, but maybe they're single use. No one really knows that could in itself generate a lot of waste that may not be able to be recycled because maybe there was like bodily fluid contact. Like What do we do with these things? So yeah, that's where I am right now.
I think that's amazing. I think that's really great. And I think it's cool that you're focusing on that, and that you're trying to shift sort of the direction that the industry has always gone, which is, once people are sick, how do we make keep them alive longer or make them comfortable until they pass, which is really like a weird way to approach taking care of people's health. So I think it's really cool that you want to change sort of the way that that's done. I think on a very different, smaller scale, that's kind of what I'm trying to do through my work.
Yeah, absolutely.
in connecting with people who, and some of the people or some of the women that I work with already have medical conditions as a result of the way that they've eaten up until this point in their lives, but they're looking to make a change, and either the side effects of the medications they've been put on, right, because they're already have these conditions, or they just don't want to be on medication to begin with. And, so some people are already coming to me because even, women who are our age, right, like in their 30s, they're like already seeing the negative side effects of the way that they've taken care of their bodies up until this point. In your 30s, you're already that's still really young, and so I'm trying to catch people before they get to that point, but sometimes they're already here and they've already got the issues, and I'm trying to use their nutrition as a way to help them either deal with a condition that maybe you can't get rid of now that you have it, but you can manage the symptoms through nutrition, or people who have family members who have conditions and they're concerned that as they get older that they're predisposed to those conditions. So they come to me now because they want to make changes so they don't end up in the same boat that like their parents are in, for example. So I think on a much smaller scale, I'm trying to help people find balance and more wellness, like spiritually, physically, emotionally, by eating in a way that aligns with their values and with their biology. And that's kind of, I'm trying to help people start out well and stay well for as long as possible, just through eating, and of course through exercise too, but and that's a really important aspect of it. But I think exercise, like I feel like I can get people to exercise with me without any issue. I think getting people to change the way that they've always eaten is a totally different story. And when people come to me, right, when people come to me and they're willing and they want to learn, they find that it's actually not as hard as they thought it was going to be, but it's really difficult when, like you were saying, this is, especially in the United States, with the way that the way we're fed in this country and the way that we're raised and taught to eat and consume, it's really hard to break those patterns. Even when you're still early in life, it's hard because it's just what we've always done and what we've always known. So anyway, it's definitely a challenge, but I think that, and my hope is that I will be able to help people not get sick, in the future by teaching them what they need to know now about how to take care of themselves, because we just aren't taught how to properly take care of ourselves, growing up. Not that some people's parents do a great job and good for them, but I also think a lot of parents, just like mine, they're average, typical, white American family. And so they eat that way. And that's the way that I was brought up. And so I had to change the fundamentals of what I understood to be like the norm, and realize that wasn't what was best for me, so that's why I had to make the shift. But it took a long time. I mean, I spent a good number of years in high school seeing all kinds of specialists because I had all these stomach problems, and I had like an endoscopy when I was really young because they couldn't figure out why I was having all these stomach issues. I was misdiagnosed with celiac. I don't have celiac. It was all of these things, and it wasn't until I went vegan that all the problems just magically went away, and it changed everything for me. And so part of the reason why I'm so confident and passionate in what I do is because I did it first, right? Like I tried it out on myself, and then I continued my education. I got certified as a nutrition coach. Yes. And, I did all of those things because I was like, okay, so I did it for myself, but I need to learn how I could do it for other people. So, similar.
I love that. No, I love that. And I think that's why these conversations are super important, because you touched on, maybe like on the smaller scale. I still think it's like the big scale, because even if you just help one individual, you're making a difference for them. So,
thank you.
So it's not that small scale. And how the focus should be on wellness. And I think, what was my point? Oh yes, these conversations are important because so that we could form these partnerships. Like I may be coming from industry, but you're coming, through the lens of like health and wellness for the individual. And I think that's really important because, yeah, how do we keep people, you know, happy and healthy? And I think it even extends beyond just like keeping people healthy. It's about like the quality of life, right? Because in my mind, like, what's the point of, you know, like investigating or focusing on individuals living a long time if they're going to be like super like over medicated or have all these side effects from the medication, right? Are they really enjoying or, you know, having these fulfilling lives, which I think that I would love to see more people have.
Right, definitely. So yeah, I think, you know, making a change, positive change early on. My dog is being so loud.
It's okay.
Yes.
Mine just woke up.
Oh, how funny.
He's like popping his head up.
Yeah. It's a good point to end on. I think the message is, you know, appreciate your body and everything that it can do, and be kind to it. So
yes,
I think that's a good point.
I love that.
Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with me today, and I look forward to future conversations because I think there are going to be a few.
Yes, Anastasia, thank you so much for your time and everything. All right, Anastasia, take care.
You too. Bye, Cynthia.
Yeah. Bye.
So I hope you all enjoyed my conversation with Cynthia, and I know I really had a good time chatting with her, and for that reason I think we're definitely going to have more conversations again in the future. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, and for all of the resources and things we talked about in today's video, check out the description on the YouTube video, and you should be able to find everything below. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to future conversations. Thanks so much, everybody.